Hello, this is Donna Gates with Body Ecology Living, and I love this podcast, and I'm really hoping that you take the time to listen to the whole thing. I have been interviewing Dr. Rowena Gates, and she's with Eng3. And this is a device or a machine that I've had for a couple of decades, really. It's an amazing machine. When I first started using it, I didn't really understand how it worked. And even the science, behind it, for the people that, created the Eng3, they didn't fully understand it until Dr. Gerald Pollack came into the picture. It's a little box with a little, cup or jar on top of it that bubbles away, and it creates beautiful colors, but it does something amazing for the body. And if there was ever a time when people need the Eng3 machine, it's right now. Now, I'm sure everybody listening knows all about protein. I'm sure eating it in some form every single day, but protein has to fold properly. And I didn't learn this for ages, but when I finally started understanding about protein folding, I realized, wow, this is an important topic. So I make very, very sure that I use my Eng3 machine. So if you want to know if you've got, well, first of all, if you don't want to age, slow down the aging process, get over all kinds of conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson, diabetes, heart disease, all of that is, the misfolded proteins that your body makes, not eats. This is not the proteins we eat. These are the proteins being made in your body, and there are millions of them in every single cell. So I highly encourage you to listen to the podcast with Dr. Rowena Gates from Eng3 and myself. I think we do a pretty good job of covering all the details, and I'm absolutely positive that for people who listen to this, they're going to find out something extremely important to get well and to slow down the aging process. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to Body Ecology Living. Today, I'm chatting with Rowena Gates of the Eng Corporation, and she happens to be the owner or the partner with someone else in one of the most amazing devices I have ever owned. And I've owned one for a really long time. I think I might have been in that category of very first people to get an Eng3. It's also called Nano-Vi. And to tell you the truth, I would try to understand why it works so well and why it was helping me so much back in those days, but I really never got a very good explanation. But science has evolved. The principals at NanoVi have got a much better understanding today. So this is going to be a very important conversation. So I'm chatting with Rowena Gates, and I just wanted you to know that she is a PhD, and that was not a good. I just want you to know that she's a PhD from the University of Washington, and her work, her study really was in international strategic alliances and regional development, which has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. But she jumped into this whole new line of work, and she focuses on helping people. I think the hardest thing that she has to do is explain to people why it's so important. And, all the many benefits. I mean, benefits are easy to explain because people, well, if they haven't bought the machine yet and they haven't had a chance to use it, then it's just the benefits are amazing. And so it's really hard to believe one little machine can do what the Eng3 Nano-Vi does. So with that long introduction, Rowena, thank you very much for coming on today.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I think we've known each other over 10 years, and I just want to tell a story because you don't even know the story. I was living in Palm Beach at that time, actually Jupiter, and I had a friend, and he, was probably one of the very first biohackers out there. That term didn't even exist yet, but he was fortunate enough to, be well off. And so if he found something that was, or heard about something that was anti-aging, he did it. And he had this machine he kept telling me about. First of all, I thought that's too good to believe. It's just another device. I don't need another one. But he went away first of all, he had an operation. It was a pretty serious one. I can't remember what it was, but I know they had to cut into his chest. And he came over 10 days or so afterwards, and it was so amazingly healed. It was like nobody can heal that fast. So I became quite curious. And then, fortunately for me, he went out of town for a couple of weeks and he said, I'll just leave this with you so you can try it. So I was definitely have been chronic fatigue all my life, and I was then. So, I put it on my bedside table because I put it actually in the bed with me. And during the night, I'd wake up and I would turn it back on again because it didn't, in those days, that early machine that I had, it didn't stay on all night long. So I'd wake up, I'd hit the button and start it over again. It relaxed me so much. I had a really good night's sleep, which is very critical for healing. And so, I thought, okay, I got to get one. And I did. And that's how we met. Over the years, I've upgraded my machine. And it's really, I guess if there was a fire in the house and I had to grab the most important thing after my dog, I would get my Nano-Vi out of the house because it's just an amazing device. And I know a lot of well-known people and athletes do have one. So I want to ask you that question too. But first of all, after saying once again, thank you, um, I would like to start off by talking about proteins because everybody knows what a protein is. They know that we eat them, eggs and fish and chicken and so on. We know that they're real important to have good muscles. Actually, it's also important that you don't fall if you have weak bones and you get older. But one of the things, so now I'm 77, and one of the things that you're supposed to do as you get older is actually eat more protein. And because our ironic thing is that we can try to eat more, but you don't absorb it. We don't have the enzymes as we get older to break protein down and digest it. So anyway, as time went by and you all had a better understanding of what the NanoVi is doing, proteins started playing a really important role. And do you mind if we could start there and explain to people that proteins aren't just what we eat? What are proteins?
Yeah, I'm happy to. The proteins are a chain of amino acids so that what you eat gets broken down into the chain of amino acids, into the individual amino acids, or maybe peptides, which is just a couple amino acids or a small number of them. And so what you eat doesn't get just, if you eat collagen, it doesn't just immediately go into your skin. It gets broken out and then rebuilt into the collagen that's in your skin and your muscles and so on. And so having the right building blocks is essential. And there's about 20 amino acids, and half of them are called essential because they're ones you have to eat, and the other half your body will make. And so all of these amino acids get strung together, and they're called peptide bonds that hold the amino acids together in a big long string. And then for that to be a functional protein, it has to fold into a three-dimensional shape that will allow it to work. And the work is determined by its shape. So that shape is critically important. And then once it's folded, it can go off and do its work. And I should mention that if it doesn't fold correctly, if it misfolds or it becomes partially unfolded, then it can be a liability to the body because it can form tangles and plaques and things that are harmful, especially to anything that's neurodegenerative.
And if it doesn't unfold at all, nothing happens
Correct.
too.
And
So it's
there,
super important that we have the proteins folding properly. Is it possible to, if one doesn't fold properly, is it possible to correct that misfolded protein?
yes, they can. These proteins are getting damaged all the time. So when they're damaged,
Mm.
they're not quite right, but they fix themselves all the time as well. And so a protein can either be fixed so it's functional, or it should be shredded up and broken down through autophagy and either moved out of the body or the parts reused. And it's when those things don't happen that you can end up with things like unfolded proteins that then stick together and cause plaques and things that aren't good for you.
So those things is you can become diabetic, you can have heart disease.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's really big in neurodegenerative, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, any of the neurological side of it. Um, And so, like in Alzheimer's, they see plaque and tau tangles that form in the brain, and then that really disrupts the neurology. So,
And what about muscle development, like exercise, energy?
well, your muscles and most of your body is made up of proteins as well. So they do all the work in there. They're called the workhorse of the cell. They're doing all the work, but they also make up almost all of your body. Aside from water and obviously there's minerals and so on as well. But this is my arm is mostly collagen and elastin and a variety of other proteins is what makes up this tissue. And then you mentioned energy, and energy is coming out of the mitochondria, but that's also relevant for the mitochondrial function and all of the work that's done in terms of signaling and the body knowing what to do. All of those functions are protein. So just to kind of go through some of them, the proteins are structural, they're signaling, your antibodies are proteins, your enzymes are proteins. And so they're playing this really pretty much everything in the body, which we should back up a little bit to your specialty, which is the DNA and your genes, right? And you're like a thought leader in that area. Well, you only have one purpose for your genes, and that is as the code, they're the blueprint for the proteins. So
In other
that's how
words, the DNA
fundamental
is
it is.
purpose to make
Yeah,
proteins to go on and do things in the body,
it's
important things, hormones, everything. You
yes.
got to have healthy proteins, and most of us aren't having them, and we age. We age way unnecessarily. So, what about that? Like, what's the connection with aging? Like, in other words, if they're misfolded or they're not folding at all, are we aging? And then things like diet, stress, are they causing the misfolding of the proteins?
Absolutely. They kind of wear it down. And so the wrinkles on my face are there because the collagen hasn't been restored and built. And um, what happens is the whole system can be essentially compromised by oxidative damage. So even if you don't have any other kind of damage, no radiation, no issues, just breathing does oxidative damage. So you can't avoid it. And so with that damage, that what the most likely thing to damage is a protein because they're very small and they're all over the place in your body. And so you're constantly being damaged. And then the question is, how well do you repair? You avoid damage with diet and nutrition, antioxidants, all those things prevent damage from happening, but they're not perfect because we've never found a way for someone to not age. We just age more slowly, but we haven't eliminated it because there's always some damage that gets through the antioxidant defense.
Well,
And
let's talk about that for a second too, because I think everybody knows about antioxidants because we're always saying how important they are. Glutathione and many we need to supposedly have a lot of antioxidants. And so I guess a lot of people at this point think that free radicals, which are the opposite of antioxidants, they're oxidants. They're creating, toxins and so on. So everybody probably thinks, oh no, we don't want free radicals, but they are necessary. Some properly functioning free radicals are necessary. Could you just explain that?
sure, free radicals have this damaging role, which is primarily what they're doing, but they also play a really important role as a signaling molecule or as signaling molecules. And those reactive oxygen species are actually what trigger your body to go into a repair mode, for example. So they go in and they damage it, and then they also tell your body to repair it. And so those diets that if people just overload on antioxidants, they can actually shut down those repair mechanisms because they're not being signaled correctly. So it could actually impede recovery and the development of muscle and so on. So it's
And
kind
I
of
think, excuse me, I was going to say, I think it's really important to understand that if you get a viral infection, for example, or cut yourself, those uh, free radicals basically come to the rescue and help us repair So they're not bad necessarily.
They're
They're
essential.
nothing. Yeah, they're essential. And the mitochondria, which is where our energy is produced, they're constantly making free radicals. So we need the energy, but we're going to absolutely get free radicals too. So I just want to let people know that if they didn't know it. So free radicals aren't bad. They're going to make them no matter what. And that's again where the NanoVi plays a really critical role. So I want to get into that. But when you've been selling these machines for a really long time, and again, at first I think it was really hard to explain to people why to own one, but over time, what's happened? Like, who owns them and what kind of benefits? Like, why would an athlete own one, for example?
So when I first met you, very long time ago, you and the person we mentioned, Ken Nalakine, were some of the few pre-biohackers that were using devices and technologies for wellness. In other words, to maintain their health and to, promote longevity or slow aging. Since then, and at that time, our devices were almost all sold for chronic illness. Diabetics, COPD, heart disease, autoimmunes, all the autoimmune diseases, people that had Lyme disease, neurological disorders, all of them. I remember at one point I counted over 50 different chronic illnesses that our device was being used for. Since
And
then,
helping, not just being used, but actually was
well,
critical.
since then it's a wonderful shift because it's where you were an absolute front runner. Now there's a whole group of people that have emerged that say, wait a minute, I want to preserve my health, I want to maintain it, slow the aging process, and certainly don't want to be old and sick. And so you're not going to get those chronic diseases. And it's been really fun because our device fits perfectly with those people. You just use it regularly. It's a preventative device. Yes, it's going to help you sleep better and feel more calm because it definitely balances the autonomic nervous system, taking people out of stress mode. And then it also provides energy because all of the protein functions associated with energy production. And then the last piece that we've had more recently is performance. And one area, always athletes, they care about the recovery times. They care about oxygen utilization. And when they improve that, they have better performance, reduced lactate, all these things that have been shown in double-blind studies. But what's really interesting to me is the brain performance in the last few years, how many people are looking at cognitive function and cognitive performance, wanting to prevent declines there or increase their focus and clarity. And that's a fairly obvious thing for people. If they're stressed, it's fairly easy to see, or if they've been highly focused, when you do that, put a lot of strain on your brain and there's a lot of repair to do. And your brain burns a great deal of oxygen. So you want to reduce that oxidative damage in the brain. And so that's been another area that people have become far more focused on in the last, I'd say, 2 years. You just
Just two
see.
years. Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think I, became aware of that, but I do. I don't worry about my brain not working, but probably that's why. But uh, although I became a long hauler after the third time I got COVID, and then I was having brain issues, like really hard to remember people's names and stuff. But anyway, that's past thanks to
Yeah.
all the things I did, and also my NanoVi. I really made sure I used it morning and night as much as I could. But so great for the brain. What about the immune system? Because we know, everybody knows by now, I think we've got the brain is having a huge impact on the microbiome and the gut. I also know that in case everybody doesn't know this by now, the spike protein, which was entering a particular receptor that we were always told about, we weren't told that as it enters this receptor, it damages that receptor. And so you're all over the body. So it's basically damaging all kinds of organs. And it pretty much shuts down the microbiome, destroys that. And at the same time, it wakes up a bunch of viruses that are living in these viral sanctuaries. maybe, and I'm a really healthy person, quite quiet, but now they're out and they're causing a lot of problems. It also is an issue when you have yeast infections. It does, again, destroy the microbiome, but then also bring out a yeast infection. So a lot of people after they've had this infection are still suffering. So would there be an impact on the microbiome, do you think?
Um,
I mean,
there, there definitely is in that it's going to support the immune system, and your the bulk of your immune system is in your microbiome. And so it definitely will help, and it helps with gut issues as well on its own. But again, it's the body really repairing itself, and you're giving it a little boost to help the body take care of its own issues. And a huge one, probably the foremost, is the immune system, is to fight off invaders. And so you definitely see that response in it. There are certain illnesses where the improvement is the gut is the first thing you see as the illness improves. And so it's pretty common that it's going to help the body sort itself out. It won't do anything or override anything. It's just that extra support lets the body do what it needs to do.
and I would think when people have diseases like Lyme disease and so on, it's doing the same thing. It's basically just supporting the body, making sure these proteins are folded properly, are corrected.
Yeah,
And when you do that, then all these other problems start to, you
yeah.
have the energy then to be able to get well.
And that's another area where your sort of thought leader is supporting detoxification, which is often an issue with Lyme.
Mhm.
But when your
With
body
everything.
has to get the
I don't
best,
know anything where detoxification hasn't played a major role in getting that disease. It's a huge reason for autism in these children. They're not good detoxifiers.
yes. And so it's getting, detoxing the organs and so on. There's lots of ways to do that, but you really need the cells to drop the toxins and really take it right out of the whole system. And that's an area where NanoVi kind of fits in. And I don't know if you know Daniel Pompa, but he has his
Oh,
five
yeah.
R's
Of
for
course.
detoxification. And he said, NanoVi hits every one of my R's.
hmm
But it's
I think I've
hard,
actually heard him say that.
it's hard to get toxins out of the cells themselves. The cells are very small and all of that. And so that's a cellular function. Of course, for it to function correctly, it's going to work to eliminate the toxins. And if you can just improve the cellular function with the NanoVi, then that's one of the benefits of it. And I feel like I should tell people how it's actually working because we haven't gotten to that yet.
Please,
But
yeah.
it will help with this explanation. The NanoVi doesn't add anything, no substance. What it's doing, what comes out of the device actually adjusts the water that's in the cells, that all proteins are immersed in water. So what we're delivering is a change in the energy state. And it's actually entropy, which means it goes from chaotic to less chaotic and so on. And so we call our water ordered water because it's very, very organized, tightly packed together water molecules. When that crosses the mucous membrane and goes into the body, it transfers that ordered state throughout the water in the body, which is ubiquitous, and all proteins are in the water. And so it creates a bit more order in the water that surrounds the proteins. And they rely on that in order to fold. And so for a protein to fold, it's going from a chain of amino acids to a complex shape. It needs energy to do that, and it gets the energy from the water. It transfers to the protein becomes more organized or ordered, and the water less so. And so that transfer is happening all the time. And one of the ways to create the order in the water, to press the water molecules together so they can be ready to support the protein, The way that happens in the body is a reactive oxygen species, which you mentioned earlier, that will cause that reaction in the water molecule. And so the foundation for this technology, NanoVi, was to mimic that natural process, modify the water molecules in an airstream in humidity outside the body, and augment what the body's doing. And so, of course, those free radicals, that singlet, that oxygen, that reactive oxygen species is essential because you have to have this condition in the water that the proteins live in. And that's why you said, free radicals can be good and bad, but you have to have them. And it's like, yeah, you really have to have them. And but what we do is we augment that. So that doesn't override anything. It only supports everything that needs to get done. And you were just talking about the immune system, and there's a double-blind placebo-controlled study showing better immune response with the NanoVi when the body's stressed. And so that stress creates acute, inflammation in the body. That's when you want that inflammation to occur because it's the healing response. And that's been shown to improve pretty significantly. With one session, it was depending on the marker, it was 10 to 17% improvement with one 15-minute session. So it was pretty significant.
And pretty obvious. Like I lent my machine to somebody, and her husband contacted me and he said, "This has been amazing. She's relaxed, and she never can relax. Her mind's going a million miles a minute." So he got one for her. And the thing is that it's very obvious, like you can't sleep. But the other thing is, I don't think people realize that the first thing you've got to do when you're trying to get well is create more energy. But if the person is wasting a lot of energy because they're stressed out and they're just burning up their energy, the first thing you really have to do is, calm that stress down. I think it's an essential first, step in getting well, basically. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And it was real obvious to me when I started using it for the first time how much it calmed me down so I could sleep, so I could start to get well. So I just want to
Exactly.
stress,
Yeah.
bring that up.
And we've done the testing with a continuous heart monitor so you can see the timing, and it's at about minute 8 that you start to see the sympathetic system plummet. So the stress is
Mm-hmm.
dropping
Mm-hmm.
at minute 8, and then it's closer to 15 minutes that the parasympathetic system starts to build. But
Mm-hmm.
almost all of us are heavy on the stress side of the equation, and so for all of us, you can see it's very measurable how that declines, but it takes a few minutes. It won't happen, at
Mm-hmm.
the very beginning of using it. So
Oh,
your
that's
system
interesting. I
is
didn't know
fine.
that. But the thing is, stress is everything. Like, stress is an infection. Stress is this awful inflammatory food that we eat all the time.
Yes.
Uh, just stress is with us forever. We can. This is a tool that helps with that.
Right.
Um,
And that alone, if you just help the body a little bit, it can do so many amazing things. But reducing stress and good nutrition and sleep, which is associated with the reducing stress, those things alone just give the body a chance to heal itself, basically.
I say, you mentioned sleep. Absolutely. I almost think, in my mind, like if somebody came and asked me, what are the 5 most important things you do to stay well, to stay healthy? I would put sleep at the top of the list, not diet, even though diet obviously is super important to me, but especially one, customized to what my body needs. But sleep, I put up there. And a lot of people can't sleep today as they get older. They can't sleep either. And that's absolutely critical. I mean, maybe if you just bought it for that one and only reason, just so you could sleep well again. But I didn't know that there was a delayed response. Um, I think a lot of reasons that people are having, our neurotransmitters, like the calming one, like GABA, people are super deficient in those. Um, I just can't, like, there's nowhere that I can come up with an issue where I can't tie this back in to the nano being important to them. But just that bubble. Okay, so it's a silver box, and on top of it is a glass container. When you push the right button, big button, well, you get this bubbling effect. It's like really pretty rainbow bubbling thing. And I've often thought it's just water bubbling away. How come it's working? But, Gerald Pollack came along and he started talking about structured water, which to me is a complicated topic for most people. But would you say that this bubbling water is structured water?
Yes, and Gerald Pollack's been a wonderful person for us. And I mentioned that our understanding has evolved, and you mentioned that earlier. And it's because of Gerald Pollack. It's because of his
Mm,
work and knowing him and kind of collaborating on these explanations. That's been really helpful to get us so that we could really nail it down, all the whole
mm.
chain of events. And it is structured water. I think of it as a huge umbrella of structured water. Like there's all kinds of things you can do by spinning the water and different things. Um, but under that umbrella, we try to stay down to our piece and we call it ordered water for that reason. It is easy water, or the fourth phase of water, which are what Gerald Pollack calls it. And we call it ordered instead of easy water because it's just a more scientifically understood term.
Mhm.
And I think easy water is sometimes misinterpreted, where easy water, exclusion zone water, which means that the molecules are so closely packed together that everything else gets pushed out or excluded. So it's called excluded zone. It's zone because it only happens on a surface. It won't happen in the big glass of water. Might be some in there, but in a big glass of water, there's no real surfaces. And so you can't just have a full glass of easy water. It's not. It has to be on the surface. And that's why it works so well in the body, because there's so many surfaces. Most of them in the cell are proteins. So to give people an idea, it's very easy for there to be 5, 10, 12,000 proteins in one cell. And a cell
Wow.
is really
Okay.
small. And so and also mitochondria are really small and they're all over the place. And so
And they're
that's
inside the cell, by the way, just so people are hearing
and
that
the
word for
cell
the
isn't
first time.
even visible. It's so small, right? And so that's why there's a lot of surfaces, and that's why that exclusion zone forms on the surface. And when there's an accumulation of that zone, then the protein can fold. And so that's how that protein folding happens. Now you can imagine it's constant and it's really fast, and there's a lot of it in there. I mean, if we have something like 75 trillion cells in the body, and there's thousands of proteins in each one, you kind of get the scale of it, and
Hmm.
and then in
And it's
medical
actually
science,
working on all those, not just picking a few and helping them out. It's actually working on all the proteins in the cell.
it yes, it has the potential to. Now your body's going to determine the priorities,
Mm.
and so it may well be a hormone function. That it could be immunity, it could be anything that your body uses that energy for in some order of priority, basically. So if it's urgent, it'll respond differently than if it's just maintenance.
Well,
um,
we're not talking about water that you drink, right? This
no,
is this is
no.
water that's already inside the cell. Can
And
you
so,
can you oh, go
yeah,
ahead?
you mentioned the bubbling water. So it's got a container of bubbling water. It's actually distilled water because we don't want any particles in there. We want it very clean. And that bubbles in order to create humidity. So it's kind of pretty to look at it, but it's what's creating the humidity. And the humidity is going through the device where it's bombarded with wavelengths that create this ordered or easy water.
Hmm.
And Gerald Pollack wrote a small article for us. It's really nice to explain why it's so important that you're using the humid airflow, the humidity, instead of water, because the surface area of all the droplets of humidity is big relative to the size of the droplet, and all of that surface gets very ordered by our device. And
But what a person sees though coming out of the little tube, I like to use that little cardboard tube. It seems like it's more than the little. if I put on the cannula, I feel like there's not as much that I'm breathing in. And with the
Yeah.
little tube, that is another option, and I put it right by my nose. It really rushes in, and you can feel that. You can feel, like you said, humidity, but there is a rushing of air.
Right. And so either of them work really well. And so people know there's the option to use a nasal cannula, which is what people breathe oxygen from, the little clear
Hmm.
tubes.
Hmm.
And when that's in your nose, you don't feel the airflow, but it's going in. And then there's a paper tube that's a disposable item that goes on the end of an arm that comes out of the device. And you can breathe directly from that tube. And that's where it just sits in front of your nose. And it really depends on where you're using it. If you're sitting still or lying down, the tube is great. But if you turn your head, you wouldn't get any of the NanoVi humidity.
Hmm.
And so in clinics, they usually use, they pretty much always use a nasal cannula in a clinic so they can be sure the person gets the treatment. And then, but at home, the tube can be more comfortable and easier to use.
Well,
And
I wonder sometimes there's all these different breathing exercises like breathe 3 times, 4 times, hold your breath, exhale, and so on. Does it matter when you're using the Eng3 that you're breathing in a particular style?
it's no, it's only the inhalation. And even when it first touches your mucous membrane, it could be in your nose that it's transferring to your system. So it doesn't even actually have
Oh,
to go
wow.
deep into the lungs, although the lungs are really perfectly designed for it. But you just if you breathe and you do breathing, special breathing while you're doing the NanoVi, you're just stacking another benefit because
Mm-hmm.
breath is another thing that's wonderful, and you can improve your situation a lot with breath.
And
So what I
including resting, I mean, relaxing. Breathing helps you relax a lot.
It's amazing what breath does. It's therapeutic. And so that's if you have the opportunity, it's a perfect kind of way to stack two different things at once.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what time this is. I'm like, I should probably check the time and see how if we have a lot of time here. But one of the things that I think is absolutely amazing, and that I wish the government allowed people to all go and get ozone therapy. There's regular excellent ozone, and then there's a more kind of a super ozone called EBOO. People can look that up. Another form of ozone. And I heard you say that so a lot of people buy these for clinics because they're not, this is not a $300 machine. And when people are, having their ozone treatment, it's a really excellent thing to come talk about stacking. Like I was thinking,
Oh
wow,
yeah.
that would be perfect. The ozone and the Nano-Vi together. Why would that be true?
Well, ozone's got I see ozone as having two important roles. One is that it's antimicrobial, so it can be used to,
Very.
essentially disinfect things. It's wonderful, and in fact, we run ozone water through our device. Through if we have a device that we're cleaning up for somebody, sometimes people let them sit, and they really need to be cleaned up. And so we
Oh,
use ozone water for that because it kills everything, but it doesn't leave any residue or it's not a chemical. So that's one role. But the other one is it can donate oxygen. And that's why people can feel better after an ozone treatment. So when it's an oxygen treatment, again, it can have oxygen radicals as a result of it. And so pairing them together is a really great idea because you're mitigating any of the oxidation that might be a result of the ozone therapy. Um,
if I've made people curious about EBOO, it's an ozone oxygen therapy, kind of like on steroids, super powerful. And Dr. Daniel Pompa that you mentioned, and he has a video online, YouTube, that you can watch to find out more about it. And I did an interview with David Minkoff down in Clearwater. He's one of the first people that brought it into his clinic, the EBOO tubes. But I've done more than a year of serious research on viruses because, again, first of all, these viruses are awakened now that people have Epstein-Barr and herpes and CMV and so on. It's a big issue. And I developed a diet that's excellent. You have to be on this diet if you have an outbreak of any kind of viral infection. And it's not long. You only need to be on it 4 to 10 days. You get these viruses back into their sanctuaries, their hiding places. And why are they so hard to get? How come they're residual? How come we can't get rid of them? Well, they actually secrete proteins, and they're able. So one of them, herpes, for example, it has to take the virus, the immune system, and has to transport it over to the T cells so that the T cells can kill the virus. But they're really clever. Really, they hide the virus so the T cell can't even see it, and it doesn't mean even if it comes out again and again and again, and you keep having an outbreak, the immune system never sees it. So here we are talking about proteins again, which is important, but it's a serious issue. And out of all the things I've looked at, all the antivirals out there and supplements, et cetera, the number one most important thing to do is ozone. It really does permanently kill them when they come out of their residual hiding places. They're called viral reservoirs. And so I'm a huge fan on doing types of ozone, and I love the idea of combining. So let's say a person can't afford it in their house, but they definitely are going to go for an ozone treatment every week, 4 or 5, 6 times to get rid of the problem, then stop being a long hauler. And so a lot of clinics would do very, very well to complement the ozone session with a NanoVi.
I love it. Dr. Minkoff has had a NanoVi for a long time, and we get quite a few referrals from him.
He
For
would.
Yeah,
He is like so on top of things. He's an amazing person. I have a podcast with him. I hope
you
people
just did a podcast with them. I
just did. Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's great. No,
Mhm.
he's pretty innovative, I think, and
Mhm.
forward thinking.
And I love doctors like that. To me, they're the ones we should absolutely be going to. They're the ones with solutions, but they seek out these very valuable special devices and help people use them properly. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we mentioned him. I love him. So let me just look over my notes real fast. I think we covered a lot of stuff. So who's buying them? Who is affording and spending the money? Let's talk about. They're not cheap, everybody.
Yeah.
They're
And
well worth it, even if it takes you a couple of years to pay it off. Once you paid it off, you have it forever. I've had mine for ages, and it's like I mentioned before. Again, if the house was burning, and I grabbed a few other special things, most of all my little dog, I would get this machine out of the house so I could always have it. But
yeah,
it's not insured, so anyway. But can we talk about cost? About who's actually spending the money to buy them, and can a normal, ordinary person buy them? I know you all really work hard to help.
yeah,
I know you really work hard to help people be able to afford them.
yeah. It's a challenge, and that's true of any of these more innovative technologies, I'm sure, where they are just expensive. We're not selling 100,000 of them and mass producing. We built them in Seattle, and you can tell by looking at it, it's a little more crafted than a lot of devices.
It was developed in Germany. Very
Well, yeah,
excellent. And
Hans is a German engineer. He was actually living in the US at the time, but yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's built forever. It's ridiculously well built, which is a good thing. Um, and it means that you can amortize it over the rest of at least certainly my lifetime. I would never expect anything to go wrong before I.
I know
But
because it's so simple and
yeah,
it's so brilliant. I mean, like you said, he didn't even know how it worked. I mean, he creates this machine. He doesn't even know exactly why it works so well.
but there was one
Uh,
piece that we didn't understand, which was the water science, which was so cool to me.
mm.
Gerald Pollack and Gerald said, "Oh my gosh, I believed this should be possible." And Hans said, "Oh my gosh, this is the explanation. This is the last missing piece that we needed with the water." But anyhow, who buys them? First of all, they're ranging currently a little over 5,000 to a little less than 14,000 in price. There's 3 different models. The least expensive model will not be that inexpensive for long, just because we can't afford to produce it at that price. We've never raised prices, and we just can't survive that way. But And so those devices, all of them will last for a very, very long time. And then
Oh,
the,
and Rowena, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but
pardon?
and I just want to interject. It's not just for you; your whole family can use them. It's not.
Oh,
That makes it even more worth
yeah.
spending the money on and having one, even in your home, if you could, because anybody can use them. Any child. I even wondered if my dog, my little puppy dog, can. Do you ever have people?
Lots of dog use. We have a lot of
Oh,
dog use.
cool.
Serena Poon, I don't know if you know her, but she is also worked in nutrition and is a chef. And she said she wasn't feeling well because of COVID. And I said, but isn't the NanoVi helping you? And she goes, well, I'm traveling, and so I had to leave it with my dogs because they're old. And I didn't want them to be without it.
Well, they don't have like a little mask. I mean, how's she putting it on them?
Just
I will. We will get back to the cost and how to
Yeah,
get
we
one.
could do the dogs later, but generally they'll breathe from the tube, or you just put it near them when they're
Mhm.
sleeping, and you just go from the tube. Is
Just
the
a little cardboard tube.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so, but anyway, you mentioned that we do try to make it work, and we'd be happy to, where we can, we'll divide up the payments so that it doesn't have to go through a leasing company or sit on a credit card as interest rates are going up and so on. And so we do try to make it work out, but the biggest thing is that it's an upfront investment, but over time it becomes very inexpensive to use. And then, as Donna said, if you have multiple users, then it becomes really inexpensive because many people can share one device.
Which is what they're
Um,
doing in a clinic. Well, it comes with a beautiful little aluminum suitcase. You don't. What if you wanted to save money? Do you have to get the suitcase?
well, you know what? If people come and you're on your recommendation, we will provide the suitcase as a complimentary gift.
Oh
It's
wow, it's
a
beautiful.
ridiculously expensive suitcase, but it's a ruggedized transportation case. It's now black with a
Oh, it
it's
is.
just the yeah.
Mine's
It's very tough. And I don't know if you know Jeffrey Gladden from Gladden Longevity, but I just heard him say that you could probably, throw it out of an airplane and it would survive. And I thought, no, don't try that.
yeah. At
But
least not with the Nano-Vi in it.
yeah,
Whatever you
yeah,
do. No,
and so
it's
that
strong.
that case doesn't come with it, and it's $350 because they're just expensive. But if somebody comes and they mention you, or they come in through a page then we would be happy to give them a complimentary case because
Wow, that's amazing.
you're
Thank you very
special.
much.
And
Well,
so that wouldn't be an extra cost, but we do need to know about it. Otherwise, we would never include it.
mm,
And then, yeah, the other thing is very occasionally we get people, they buy the least expensive device and then they realize right away that it's not, too many people want to use it and it takes too long. And so they upgrade to another device. So we will occasionally get the smaller devices in, which are um, very slightly used because we give people the option to upgrade it within 90 days or something.
mhm.
And so there can be some slight little things available there, and then it has a return option, so that we never want somebody to be find that it's not for them, and then have this investment made. And so there's I think it's a month or something is a return option on it. So
Mine is never broken after all these years. They don't break, do they? I mean,
yeah,
mine are perfect. Mine's like this day I bought it. So,
I
do
know.
they break? Do they need repairing?
I take it for granted. And then my red light just broke, and I'm like, "What's with this?"
Oh, after years.
Yeah, I
Makes me.
expect everything to last forever, but evidently that's unrealistic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had it a long time and it's just going full stream. And I'm more grateful than ever because I really need it right now. Um,
Yeah.
Again, the COVID thing really did its number on me. After I got it 3 times, I mean, actually, the COVID did not do anything for me. It just seemed fine. And then I started getting a skin breakout on my back. And I thought, well, people are getting herpes, they're reactivating the viruses. And that's what I thought it was. But then it popped around to other places, started itching like crazy. And of course, I was super grateful for the Nano-Vi too. So I
Yeah.
think I would have had much worse symptoms if I didn't have that morning and night. I literally put it by my bedside, and it's on a table. And then the long arm is coming in. I'll sit there and breathe it. And then if I wake up in the night for some reason to go to the bathroom or something, I will put it back on again. And then I always do it first thing in the morning. I'll just lie there for a little while and breathe it again. So I find it's real easy to work it into my day. And I know a lot of people, like I've heard Dave Asprey say that he keeps his on his desk.
I do
I don't
too.
really ever sit still. So I'm not, I mean, I don't stay at my desk all day and I move my little computer around. So I find using it in the morning and at bedtime is
Mhm.
perfect.
And I've heard a lot of, I didn't realize how powerful it is for people that don't sleep well to use it during that hour before sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody mentioned it to me, a woman that does brain performance mentioned it to me, and I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, I
Mm-hmm.
was using it a lot, but not right before sleep. And I actually could tell the difference, I think. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a great time to put it on 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever you can do.
Well, I'm a blood type A, and A's, most all the kids with autism are blood type A. They have a mind that just kind of works all the time trying to figure everything out. In Japan, more people are blood type A than any other blood type, and they're fantastic scientists. They're always perfecting everything. So Japan's very much blood type A. Well, you really need devices like that. Nothing to me works as good. I always use it; just become like part of my life. So if you're out there and not being able to quiet your chattering mind, the other thing I do too is I'll put on a podcast. I have some great podcasts, hosts I love, and then it'll help me also relax too while I breathe, just in case anybody cares about that. But it changes your mind. You're not worrying about something. You're not listening to somebody. So it's just another
Mhm.
little tip. But it's time for us to end this,
Oh,
Rowena. Thank you so much. I'm so glad years have gone by and you have such a good understanding and you've really gotten excellent at explaining it to people. So I hope by now people get that this is a great machine and you all care. You're such a caring company that you really want people to have it and you want sinners to have it. So if you go to a sinner, be sure to show this podcast. Let somebody, whoever owns like the center, listen to this, but also share this, please, and let those people who can get it, let it help them. So, Rowena, thank you so much. I
oh,
really appreciate
yeah.
this.
Thank you. And people are more than welcome. We can help them locate a center near them
Oh,
if
good idea.
they don't
Yeah.
already know about one. And so we're happy to help do whatever we can. It's been a wonderful, I feel honored to be associated with it because it just is so helpful to people. So I'm glad it's helpful to you, especially because you're a treasure.
Oh
We
my
want to
gosh,
keep it
thank
around.
you.
The other one that we want to keep around, who now has a device, is Pope Francis. That's our most
Oh,
famous
wow.
NanoVi owner is Pope Francis.
Wow. And
Isn't
just
that wonderful?
how did he get one? Of course,
We
everyone's going
were
to want to
asked
know that.
about
Did somebody just
we were asked
give him
about
one?
it, and a doctor in Italy highly recommended it for him. And so then we were invited to give him one, and then we got a thank you letter that acknowledging it. And so it was very cool. It's quite a strict process. You can't just send things into the Vatican.
Hmm.
So it was really, really pretty special.
Have you gotten feedback from him?
No, I haven't. It's
Mm.
yeah.
I
Uh,
hope he's getting it. There's the other priests and bishops and so are not using it instead. But anyway, yeah, he's has a big influence on a lot of people. But it's certainly been great for me, and I would like for everybody to look up, the information on the studies and um, even like people raving over it. So where would they go to find information and to be able to talk to you, buy one, whatever? Where should they go?
Eng3.com, and the I don't know there was a page that we developed that's especially with content related to you, which
Oh,
would be the best place to go because it will tie into your listeners. And
mm-hmm.
I think it's eng3.com body ecology.
for / body ecology. Oh, great! I didn't
But
remember that even, but I
well, I'd have to look it up right now. But maybe do you have a place where you can put it in the notes?
Oh, yeah. When we do the notes for this podcast, we'll be sure it's down at the bottom and they can just click on it.
Yeah, we'll be sure we have the right link for that. But general
Okay.
information is at eng3.com, but it's great if you go in through Donna's page because it'll be more tailored.
And Eng is spelled E-N-G, but I've heard some people like Dave Asper, he pronounces it Inge, like with a soft G.
He's
What?
engineering. He can't get
Oh,
over it. And then the other side do English because it's, but he thinks of engineering. But Eng
Dave
is
does. But
actually a
Eng
name.
is okay. It's already saying.
Yeah,
Oh,
eng3.com.
3. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay,
ENG3.
perfect. Well,
Yeah.
thank you once again, and I'll say goodbye. And I'm hoping everybody listens who's out there and really struggling with their health or really doesn't have a huge health problem, but they're aging because it's actually the number one top of my list reason. I got I have some new grandchildren, like I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I have a different, more motivation than ever to stay alive but be healthy so I can pick them up and play with them and watch them
How
grow.
fun.
Anyway,
Congratulations.
yeah, they're bringing new joy into my life. So, well,
Very.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's so wonderful to see you. Thank you.